Ever wonder what it really took for Michael Jordan to become the greatest? We all know the 6 rings, the MVP trophies, the iconic dunks. We saw the glory, the celebrations, the highlights on repeat. But that's only half the story. The part we never saw, the part that happened behind closed doors, in grueling practices, and in the quiet moments of doubt, that's where the legend was truly forged. This isn't just about talent. It's about an obsession, a relentless drive that pushed him and everyone around him to the absolute edge. We've heard the stories about his insane competitiveness, how he turned a simple card game into a life-or-death battle. But imagine applying that same intensity to every single day of your life. The cost of that greatness was immense, not just for him, but for his teammates, his rivals, and his family. He demanded perfection, and that demand created friction. It created rivals, and it sometimes created enemies, even within his own locker room. Was it worth it? The rings say yes, but what about the personal toll? What sacrifices did he have to make in his personal life to achieve that level of professional perfection? We're going beyond the highlight reels to uncover the unseen struggles, the mental battles, and the true human cost of becoming a global icon. We'll explore the rivalries that defined him, the moments of failure that fueled him, and the psychological warfare he waged on the court. This is the story of the man behind the Jumpman logo, the story of what we never saw. Join us as we look beyond the rings. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Amazing Sport Channel. Everyone knows the rings, 6 of them, a symbol of Michael Jordan's dominance, his absolute mastery of the game. But what most people don't know is how close he came to never wearing even one. This is the story behind the rings, the one you've never heard. Before the sold-out arenas, before the commercials, the sneakers, the mythology, there was just a kid in Wilmington, North Carolina. A kid who famously didn't make his high school varsity team. It wasn't because he wasn't talented. The coaches saw the spark, but they said he wasn't ready. Too short, too raw. Now, a moment like that could break a lot of people. It could plant a seed of doubt that chokes out ambition. But for Michael Jordan, it did the opposite. It lit a fire. While other kids slept in, he was in the gym, shooting hundreds of jumpers. While they celebrated weekend wins, he was obsessed, not with fame, not with being the next big thing, but with proving something to himself. This wasn't about being better than everyone else yet. It was about never, ever feeling the sharp sting of disappointment again. And that mindset, that relentless drive, it followed him everywhere. He made the varsity team the next year, of course, and absolutely dominated. Then came the University of North Carolina, a powerhouse program under the legendary Dean Smith. Jordan wasn't the immediate superstar. He was part of a system, a cog in a machine built on teamwork and discipline. But you could see glimpses of the future legend. The athleticism was off the charts. The competitive fire burned just as bright. And then came the 1980 NCAA championship game against Georgetown. The final seconds ticking down, UNC trailing by 1. The ball swings to a freshman on the wing. It's Jordan. He rises up, releases the shot, and it's pure. Nothing but net. That shot didn't just win a championship. It announced to the world that Michael Jordan wasn't just another player. He was clutch. He was a winner. It was the first taste of the big moment, and it was clear he was born for it. Fast forward to the 1984 NBA draft. The Houston Rockets take Hakeem Olajuwon first. The Portland Trail Blazers, needing a center, infamously draft Sam Bowie second. And then, at number 3, the Chicago Bulls select the guard from North Carolina. At the time, nobody could have predicted what was coming. The Bulls were a struggling franchise, a non-factor in the league. Jordan arrived in Chicago not as a savior, but as a spark of hope. And from his very first game, he was electric. He played with a joy and ferocity that was just different. He flew through the air, defied gravity, and competed on every single possession. He won Rookie of the Year, became an instant all-star, and put the Bulls on the map. But winning in the NBA is a different beast. Jordan was a one-man highlight reel, but he was still a solo act trying to take down giants. He was putting up historic numbers, scoring 63 points in a playoff game against the Boston Celtics, a performance that made Larry Bird say, "That's not Michael Jordan out there. That's God disguised as Michael Jordan." But they still lost. Year after year, he ran into the same walls. First Bird Celtics, and then a new, more physical, and more intimidating rival, the Detroit Pistons. The late 80s were defined by one roadblock, the bad boy Pistons. Led by Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, and Bill Laimbeer, they were tough, smart, and unapologetically physical. They created a defensive strategy specifically to stop Jordan, famously known as the Jordan rules. They would double-team him, triple-team him, push him, shove him, and do whatever it took to get in his head and keep him from the basket. In 1988, 1989, and 1990, the story was the same. Jordan would have incredible individual performances, but the Bulls would lose to the Pistons in the playoffs. The narrative started to build. Jordan was a spectacular player, maybe the best individual talent ever, but he couldn't win a championship. He was a scorer, not a leader who could elevate his whole team. The criticism stung far more than any physical blow from the Pistons. It was a direct challenge to the very core of his competitive spirit. That kid who got cut from varsity was back, feeling that same familiar sting. Something had to change. The change wasn't just about Jordan. It was about the whole team. The Bulls front office brought in a new coach, Phil Jackson, a student of the game with a unique, Zen-like approach. He introduced the triangle offense, a system designed to create a more balanced attack, getting everyone involved instead of just relying on Jordan's heroics. It was a tough adjustment for Michael. He had to learn to trust his teammates more, to give up the ball, to believe that the system could succeed where his individual brilliance had failed. Alongside him, Scottie Pippen was developing from a talented sidekick into a superstar in his own right, a defensive force and a perfect complement to Jordan. Players like Horace Grant provided the grit and rebounding down low. It was no longer just the Michael Jordan show, it was the Chicago Bulls. And in the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals, they faced their demons one last time, the Pistons. But this time was different. The Bulls were a cohesive unit. They moved the ball, played suffocating defense, and met the Pistons' physicality with their own focused execution. It wasn't just a win, it was a demolition, a 4-game sweep. As the final seconds ticked off, the Pistons walked off the court without shaking hands, a final act of defiance. But it didn't matter. The king had been dethroned. The path was finally clear. In the 1991 NBA Finals, the Bulls faced Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers. After losing Game 1 at home, the old doubts could have crept back in. But this was a new team, a new Michael. Jordan guarded Magic, Pippen was phenomenal, and the triangle offense hummed. The Bulls won the next 4 straight games, and on the Lakers' home floor, Michael Jordan finally held the championship trophy, weeping with his father by his side. The kid from North Carolina was on top of the world. But one wasn't enough. The next year, they defeated the Portland Trail Blazers, with Jordan delivering his famous shrug after hitting a barrage of three-pointers. Then, in 1993, they faced Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns in a grueling series, completing the three-peat. 3 straight championships. Jordan had reached the pinnacle. He had done what few in history had ever accomplished. He had answered every critic and silenced every doubt. The legacy seemed complete, but the story was far from over. A personal tragedy and a shocking retirement would soon turn the sports world upside down, setting the stage for one of the greatest comebacks in history. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to see what happens next in the story of Michael Jordan's rings, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2. We'll see you in the next one. Welcome back to part 2 of Behind Michael Jordan's Rings. In our first part, we saw the spark. Today, we dive into the fire that forged the legend. This is the story of the grind nobody applauded, the brutal journey to becoming Michael Jordan. College basketball put Jordan on the map, but the NBA was a different beast entirely. It was a harsh dose of reality. When he stepped onto that professional court, the kid from North Carolina was pure electricity. He wasn't just playing basketball. He was redefining what was possible with a ball in his hands. The dunks, the acrobatic layups, the fadeaway jumpers, it was a spectacle. He scored. He soared. He entertained millions. And yet, when it mattered most, he lost. The league was full of giants, teams built like dynasties. The Boston Celtics with Larry Bird, the Detroit Pistons, the Bad Boys with their brutal, physical style. You could be the most talented player in the world, but you can't win a championship alone. They slapped a label on him, a label that would haunt him for years. Great player. Every single playoff exit was another piece of evidence. The Pistons, in particular, became his personal nightmare. They didn't just beat the Bulls, they beat him up. They created the Jordan rules, a defensive strategy designed to physically punish him every time he touched the ball. Every headline questioned his game. He scores too much. He's too selfish. He doesn't make his teammates better. The pressure was immense, coming from all sides. It wasn't just about beating his opponents anymore. It was about beating the narrative, beating the doubt that was starting to creep in. Could he ever trust his teammates enough to give up the ball in a crucial moment? Could he adapt his one-man show style of play? Could he, Michael Jordan, the ultimate competitor, sacrifice control for the sake of the team? These weren't just basketball questions. They were questions about his very identity as a player. This is where the real transformation began, far away from the bright lights and cheering crowds. This is where Jordan started building the champion, not just the superstar. He didn't just train his body to jump higher or shoot better. He trained his mind. He trained his tolerance for failure. He took every loss, every criticism, every cheap shot from the Pistons, and he turned it into fuel. He developed a psychological armor that was just as important as his physical gifts. His practices became the stuff of legend. They weren't just drills, they were battles. He treated every scrimmage like it was Game 7 of the NBA Finals. The standards he set were ruthless, not just for them, but for himself most of all. He was the first one in the gym and the last one to leave. He demanded perfection because he knew that is what it would take to topple the giants of the league. This approach created a complicated dynamic in the locker room. Some teammates, the ones who shared his obsessive drive, loved him for it. They saw that he was pushing them to be better than they ever thought they could be. Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, they rose to the challenge. Others, they feared him. They resented the constant pressure, the relentless intensity. Jordan wasn't there to be their friend. He was there to win. He believed, deep in his core, one simple truth: if the goal is greatness, then comfort is not part of the deal. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to face conflict and push through pain. He began to see the court differently. He started to trust his teammates more, not because he was becoming less of a competitor, but because he was becoming a smarter one. He understood that drawing a double team and kicking the ball out to an open John Paxson for a game-winning shot was just as valuable as making the shot himself. This was the most difficult evolution for him, learning that sometimes the greatest act of strength is to let go. The world saw the highlights, the sneaker commercials, the global icon. He was paying the price for the championships that were yet to come. This wasn't about talent anymore. This was about will. The pain of losing to Detroit again and again wasn't just a roadblock. It was the crucible that forged the dynasty. Without the bad boys, there might never have been the champion Michael Jordan we remember. That rivalry forced him to evolve, to become more than just a scorer. It forced the Bulls to become more than just Michael and the Jordan-heirs. They had to become a team, a tough, resilient, battle-hardened team. And as the 80s came to a close, a new decade dawned. Jordan was no longer the flashy rookie. He was a veteran, scarred by years of playoff battles. The label great player, not a winner, still lingered in the air. But something had shifted. The pain had been turned into strength. The stage was set for one of the greatest stories in sports history. The storm was coming. Join us in part 3, where we witness the breakthrough, the moment Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls finally conquered their demons and began their historic march to their first NBA championship. Thanks for watching, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. After years of battling, after all the setbacks and the doubts, the dam finally broke. And when the championships came, they didn't just trickle in, they arrived like a tidal wave. First, the breakthrough against the Pistons. Then, the first ring, then another, and another, a three-peat. The Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan, were on top of the world. It was a dynasty forged in fire, a testament to relentless will. From the outside, looking at the banners, the trophies, the sold-out arenas, it was the picture of perfection, the ultimate sports story. But what did it feel like from the inside? For the man at the center of it all, it was glorious, yes, but it was also utterly exhausting. The expectations on Michael Jordan didn't clock out after the final buzzer. They followed him home, into the locker room, into every practice. Winning one championship didn't bring peace. It just raised the stakes. It brought an immense, crushing pressure to do it all over again. Every game was a new test of his greatness. Every season, he had a giant target on his back, with every team in the league gunning for him, wanting to be the one to knock the king off his throne. He had to be more than just the best player on the court. He had to be the driving force, the emotional engine, the unwavering standard of excellence for everyone around him. And that meant pushing himself harder than anyone could imagine. It meant demanding more from his teammates, sometimes in ways that were abrasive and uncomfortable. He pushed Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and later Dennis Rodman, not because he was cruel, but because he knew what it took to win. He understood that slipping, even for a moment, even for one play, could be the difference between a championship and becoming just another team. For Michael Jordan, being ordinary was the ultimate failure. It was simply unacceptable. Then came the shocker. At the absolute peak of his powers, after 3 straight titles, he walked away. The world was stunned. He traded his basketball sneakers for baseball cleats, chasing a different dream, a promise he made to his late father. The Bulls dynasty seemed over. The league moved on, but the fire hadn't gone out. It was just waiting for the right moment to roar back to life. And then, with 2 simple words, "I'm back," everything changed again. His return wasn't just a comeback, it was a reclamation. The league had new stars, new challengers. But Jordan was there to remind everyone who the true king was. He retooled his game, refocused his mind, and led the Bulls to another three-peat, 6 championships in 8 years. It's a run of dominance that's almost mythical. We see the rings, we see the highlights, we see the celebration. The legacy is undeniable, forever etched in history. But what we often miss is the invisible weight he carried. The weight of being Michael Jordan. He wasn't just competing against other teams. He was competing against the ghosts of his own past performances, against a standard of perfection that only he could see. Every single night, he had to live up to the legend he had created. The rings were real. The iconic moments were real, but so was the cost. After years of battling, after all the setbacks and the doubts, the dam finally broke. And when the championships came, they didn't just trickle in, they arrived like a tidal wave. First, the breakthrough against the Pistons, then the first ring, then another, and another, a three-peat. The Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan, were on top of the world. It was a dynasty forged in fire, a testament to relentless will. From the outside, looking at the banners, the trophies, the sold-out arenas, it was the picture of perfection, the ultimate sports story. But what did it feel like from the inside? For the man at the center of it all, it was glorious, yes, but it was also utterly exhausting. The expectations on Michael Jordan didn't clock out after the final buzzer. They followed him home, into the locker room, into every practice. Winning one championship didn't bring peace. It just raised the stakes. It brought an immense, crushing pressure to do it all over again. Every game was a new test of his greatness. Every season, he had a giant target on his back, with every team in the league gunning for him, wanting to be the one to knock the king off his throne. He had to be more than just the best player on the court. He had to be the driving force, the emotional engine, the unwavering standard of excellence for everyone around him. And that meant pushing himself harder than anyone could imagine. It meant demanding more from his teammates, sometimes in ways that were abrasive and uncomfortable. He pushed Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and later Dennis Rodman, not because he was cruel, but because he knew what it took to win. He understood that slipping, even for a moment, even for one play, could be the difference between a championship and becoming just another team. For Michael Jordan, being ordinary was the ultimate failure. It was simply unacceptable. Then came the shocker. At the absolute peak of his powers, after 3 straight titles, he walked away. The world was stunned. He traded his basketball sneakers for baseball cleats, chasing a different dream, a promise he made to his late father. The Bulls dynasty seemed over. The league moved on, but the fire hadn't gone out. It was just waiting for the right moment to roar back to life. And then, with two simple words, "I'm back," everything changed again. His return wasn't just a comeback, it was a reclamation. The league had new stars, new challengers. But Jordan was there to remind everyone who the true king was. He retooled his game, refocused his mind, and led the Bulls to another three-peat, 6 championships in 8 years. It's a run of dominance that's almost mythical. We see the rings, we see the highlights, we see the celebration. The legacy is undeniable, forever etched in history. But what we often miss is the invisible weight he carried, the weight of being Michael Jordan. He wasn't just competing against other teams. He was competing against the ghosts of his own past performances, against a standard of perfection that only he could see. Every single night, he had to live up to the legend he had created. The rings were real. The iconic moments were real, but so was the cost. When the noise of the sold-out stadiums finally faded, and the roar of the crowd became a distant echo, what remained wasn't just a basketball player. It was an idea, a mindset, a blueprint for what it truly means to be great. Michael Jordan didn't just play the game. He fundamentally redefined what greatness looked like, not just in sports, but in any field of human endeavor. We often talk about his 6 rings, his MVP trophies, his gravity-defying dunks, but the real story, the one that resonates long after the highlights have ended, isn't about perfection. It's about obsession. It wasn't about being born with more talent than anyone else, though he certainly had plenty. It was about a relentless, almost maniacal work ethic that turned that talent into an unstoppable force. He wasn't just competing against his opponents. He was competing against the very limits of what was thought possible. Jordan's career is a masterclass in a simple, brutal truth. Success has a price, and it's a price that not everyone is willing to pay. It's paid in the early morning workouts when everyone else is asleep. It is paid in the thousands of extra shots taken after practice when the gym is empty and quiet. It's paid in the sweat, the pain, the exhaustion, and the mental fortitude to push through when your body is screaming at you to stop. Think about the flu game. It's iconic not just because he scored 38 points, but because he did it while battling a crippling illness. He could have sat out. No one would have blamed him, but that wasn't in his DNA. That game wasn't just about winning a basketball match. It was a testament to his will, a physical manifestation of his refusal to be defeated by anything, even his own body. He showed the world that the biggest battles are often fought within yourself. His infamous competitiveness wasn't just reserved for game day. It spilled into everything. Practices were legendary for their intensity. He would push his teammates, challenge them, sometimes infuriate them, all with one goal in mind: to make them better, to make the team unbeatable. He knew that championships weren't won under the bright lights of the finals, but forged in the fire of daily preparation. He demanded as much from others as he did from himself, and he demanded nothing short of everything. This is the part of the story that often gets lost behind the shine of the trophies. The rings tell one story, a story of victory and dominance. But the journey tells another, more profound story. It's a story of sacrifice, of discipline, and of an unyielding commitment to a goal. It's about falling down 7 times and getting up 8, each time more determined than the last. It's about facing failure, not as an endpoint, but as a stepping stone. As he famously said, "I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." So maybe, just maybe, the real lesson from Michael Jordan's life isn't about how high he could jump or how gracefully he could score. Maybe the real lesson is about how much he was willing to endure, how much he was willing to sacrifice, how he turned every setback into fuel, every doubt into motivation, and every challenge into an opportunity. Because behind every ring, behind every iconic moment, and behind the legend of number 23, there is a human story. A story of a man who decided he wouldn't just be a player in the game of life, but would define the way it's played for generations to come. That's the real legacy. Thanks for watching this series. If you've been inspired by this journey, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Let us know in the comments what Michael Jordan's legacy means to you. We'll see you in the next one. What does it take to become the greatest of all time? Is it natural talent, a relentless work ethic, or something more? Today, we're diving deep into the story of a man who didn't just play basketball, he redefined it. This is the story of Michael Jordan, but maybe not the one you think you know. Forget the highlight reels for a moment. Let's go back to the beginning. Picture this, a skinny kid from Wilmington, North Carolina, who loves baseball more than basketball. His older brother, Larry, consistently beats him in one-on-one games in their backyard. This isn't the origin story of a legend. It's the story of an underdog, and the first major setback. It's almost legendary in itself. At Laney High School, Michael, then a sophomore, tried out for the varsity basketball team. He didn't make the cut. He was deemed as short, not skilled enough. Instead, he was sent to the junior varsity team. Imagine the sting of that rejection. Many would have quit. Many would have accepted that maybe basketball wasn't their path. But for Michael, this wasn't an ending. It was the spark that lit an inferno. He used that rejection letter as fuel. Every time he felt like giving up, he'd think about that list without his name on it. He spent the entire summer practicing, waking up before dawn, pushing himself to the absolute limit. He grew 4 inches that year, but more importantly, his determination grew tenfold. The next year, he didn't just make the team, he dominated. This failure as fuel mindset became the hallmark of his career. He once said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." This isn't just a motivational quote, it was his reality. When he finally made it to the NBA, he wasn't immediately a champion. He was an explosive scorer, a human highlight reel, but his Chicago Bulls couldn't get past the dominant teams of the 80s, especially the Detroit Pistons, the infamous Bad Boys. They were bigger, stronger, and played a punishing style of basketball designed to stop him. For 3 straight years, they knocked Jordan and the Bulls out of the playoffs. The media questioned if a scoring champion could ever lead a team to a title. Again, faced with a wall, Jordan didn't back down. He and his team didn't just try to get better, they transformed. Jordan hit the weight room, packing on muscle to withstand the physical punishment. The team adopted the triangle offense, a system that required trust and ball movement. Forcing Jordan to rely on his teammates more than ever, it was a huge adjustment for a player used to doing everything himself. He had to evolve from a spectacular player into a spectacular leader. And then, it happened. In 1991, they finally broke through, sweeping the Pistons on their way to their first NBA championship. It was a victory born from years of frustration and relentless adaptation. This wasn't just about talent winning out. It was about intelligence, strategy, and the humility to change. Even at the peak of his powers, after winning 3 consecutive championships, he shocked the world by retiring to play professional baseball. People call it a bizarre career move, a failed experiment. But looking back, it shows a man who was unafraid to chase a new challenge, to honor a promise to his late father, and to be a rookie all over again. He wasn't afraid to look human, to struggle. And when he returned to basketball with that simple facts that read on back, he was hungrier than ever, leading the Bulls to another three-peat. The story of Michael Jordan isn't just about his incredible dunks or his game-winning shots. It's the story of a kid who was cut from his high school team. It's the story of a star who was repeatedly beaten down by a rival. It is the story of a champion who wasn't afraid to fail in a completely new arena. His greatness wasn't a gift. It was forged in the fire of his setbacks. If this story changed how you see greatness, hit like, subscribe to Amazing Sport channel, and tell us which part of Jordan's journey surprised you most.